All right. Earlier, somebody had a take that I want to criticize. And somebody, not just anybody, somebody, the person called somebody in chat. I'm afraid of your take on morality. I'm happy that you're afraid. Be extra critical of it, okay? I was leaking the DMs here. And I was saying that somebody here says, for me, morality comes from experience and empathy. For somebody said, morality comes from experience and empathy. And that's answering where morality comes from. They're saying that as a response to me criticizing a lot of people for seeing morality as simply something about instincts. Perhaps before in the old days, people saw morality as they saw the justification, the basis, and the root of morality in Scripture, in the Gospel, in the Word of God. And as that has left, Nietzsche was part of the people who asked, all right, now that God left, like, where's morality going to come from? What do we do? And a lot of people don't even think about it, right? It's just instincts. Oh, you're talking about your personal morality. But I think, and that's my take, I think everybody's morality comes from the same place. And I think everybody's moral compass is the same. The way we determine what's moral and what isn't is also the same for everyone. No matter what you claim your morality is, it's the same for everyone. And depending on how you interpret that moral compass will also will dictate how you see politics and probably your political stance in life. You think morality comes from human instinct? No, I don't. I don't think it comes from human instinct. I think there's a reason why we believe some things are moral and some things aren't. I think there's logic behind it, but we don't necessarily see that logic, and but we still feel the result of that logic, and therefore we feel like it's an instinct. For example, let's go back to biology and evolution for 2 seconds, really quickly. All right, humans have never lived on their own. We've always lived in communities, in groups. We've always been social, right? We can all agree on that. Through evolution, because we've evolved as a social species, not only have we evolved physically and mentally to survive in nature, but we've also evolved, maybe not physically, but more mentally physically as well, with the vocal cords and stuff like that. We've also evolved physically and mentally to communicate, to live amongst others. Because our evolution wasn't only about our individual, but about our group. Morality comes from emotions? Not necessarily. I don't think so either. I think morality comes from a biological necessity to contribute to the group's well-being. Because the group's well-being is inherently tied to your own well-being as an individual. So we've evolved to care for our own well-being. You know, self-preservation is very important in evolutionary biology. But self-preservation in our context as human beings is linked extremely intimately with the preservation of the group. Because alone, a human being alone is going to struggle a lot. A human being in a group can assure safety and health, which allows to perpetuate the species. So our own state of self-preservation in regards to this, the preservation of the group is morality to me. So for example, we don't want to kill someone. We see it as immoral to kill. Is it because God made it so? No. Is it in our instincts to not want to kill? Yes. Yes, people will act really badly after killing someone, not because they think they're going to jail, just because they just feel really bad about ending a life. But now, why do we feel that way? I believe because this kind of behavior, murder in this case, is biologically prohibited in a way, right? Biologically, we don't want to kill others because in groups, right, individuals who procreated didn't kill others because we needed others to live, right? So there was an incentive to pass on the gene of not wanting to kill. Morality, though it is, I believe, biologically determined by our interests as individuals living in a social body. Because of that, your morality is determined by centuries of evolution, millennias of evolution that make you behave in a way that's the best for yourself and for the community. Both interests are the same. Your self-interest is the same as the interest of the community. And the thing is, murder can be justifiable morally in terms of protecting the group, of course, right? We'll feel bad about murder instinctively, right? But logically, if it's to protect the social group, then we'll justify it. People have justified murder through these ways, and you can have people justify murder, unjustifiable murder, by making them a threat to the community. That's one of the best ways to make people kill others, right? Historically, Jews were a threat, and therefore it justified their extermination. And right now, the queers, they're the threat. And we'll see where that goes. All that to say, I believe our morality is not about experience or empathy, though you could call it empathy, but it's really, I believe, biologically determined. We want the best for the group because that protects us as an individual, and our self-preservation makes us want to attend to the group. What conclusions can we take away from the idea that morality is like biological? The conclusion I can get from it, all right, maybe a political conclusion I can get from it, is that first, everyone shares the same moral framework, because it's not, it's not theoretical. It's ingrained, I believe, in our biology. Our biology and the principles of self-preservation and social protection, we'll call it, right? Or protection of the self-preservation through the social group. So these two principles that are ingrained in our biology determine how our moral frameworks work, right? And because it's in our biology, I believe everybody shares that same moral framework. So because everybody share the same moral framework within their biology, I think understanding that framework is what's the most important, right? It's what's most important here. And I believe the best way to understand that framework is through a utilitarian perspective. I'm a utilitarian, and I think everyone is, even though they don't accept it. I think any other moral framework is utilitarian if you reduce them to, if you break them down. Like even deontology, right? I think even deontology is utilitarian in its essence. Zero Watch says, I'm a utilitarian, but utilitarianism can lead to some bad conclusions. I don't think that, you can lead you some bad conclusions, utilitarianism, and that's why I think it's necessary to communicate or to exchange on ideas of utilitarianism, of decisions or morality, right? If I believe something is moral or immoral, it's not just immoral because I say so, or because I believe so, or because my utilitarian logic brought me to that conclusion. I need to talk about it. I need to discuss it. I need to be criticized and criticize others. And then you can determine the best utilitarian choice by talking to others and discussing with others. So skeptical of your utilitarianism is important. And I don't think we can achieve like the truth through utilitarianism. I think we can only discuss it. No, I don't subscribe to classical utilitarianism. No. To rule utilitarianism. I think utilitarianism has to be rule utilitarianism. The idea that concepts and ideas in themselves can have utility is important as well. So for example, killing one person and feed 1,000. All right, we do the utilitarian calculation, and it's like, all right, feeding 1,000 is so much better than killing, one. So let's feed 1,000 and sacrifice one person. But I think utilitarianism goes far beyond that, because we have to take into consideration as well the impact of sacrificing one person to feed 1,000 in the minds of people who live it, right? For example, if one person dies to feed 1,000, yeah, you feed 1,000, but in a year, what happens if we have to sacrifice another? Then it could be me, it could be my family, it could be someone I know, it could be my friend. It creates an uncertainty, it creates a insecurity in that society that in itself might not, has to be weighed in the utility argument, and to me doesn't make it. It would bring about more harm than benefits, I believe, because you create an insecurity. Think about the Purge, right? The movie The Purge, where one night you're allowed to, people are allowed to kill, they're allowed to do whatever they want. And yeah, the whole year there's less crime and the country is more peaceful, but that one night you get really close to dying, or to see your family, doing really atrocious stuff. And because of that, you might utilitarian, the classical way that we see libertarian is 364 days of peace versus one night of carnage and murder and all that. And we're like, all right, that's a good trade. Let's do the Purge or whatever. But you have to keep in mind the whole culture that the Purge brings about, the fear that it brings about on that day, the risk of seeing your close ones, your neighbors, do something really, really shitty and being afraid of them. All of that needs to be taken into consideration as well. I feel like a lot of the criticism of utilitarianism is that boils utilitarianism to the very surface level consequences of decisions and of policy and stuff like that. But there's also some deeper consequences to making decisions that we have to keep in mind. Which brings me to Lenore, who says, can you please explain how you think deontology is utilitarian? I think if you're a deontologist, you're doing it because you want to maximize happiness and reduce harm. The reason why you become a deontologist is because you believe that it's the best moral system for humanity. In our very being, the best system is the one that benefits humanity the most. And I think that logic in itself is utilitarian, or at least that's how I see utilitarianism. When you make a decision between something or the other, it's because you believe that one is better than the other, that one has better results than the other. And that in itself is utilitarian. If you believe that deontology is better than utilitarianism, it's because you believe that deontology yields better result or is more consistent. And because you believe that this consistency is worth it, it becomes a variable in weighing out which one is the best. Halitosis 911 says, deontology is an ethical theory that says actions are good or bad according to a clear set of rules. Its name comes from the Greek word dion, meaning duty. Actions that align with these rules are ethical, while actions that don't aren't. And I know that. But the whole idea that we're better to do actions according to a clear set of rules, the reason why you believe that that's the best way to go about it is because you believe it's the best way to go about it. It's the one that benefits humanity the most. And saying, I adhere to this because it's the one that benefits humanity the most is a utilitarian calculation. It's the result of utilitarian calculation. Yeah, somebody says people measure utility differently, which is true, which is why we need to discuss about it. And I think discussing about it is what creates what we define as morality, right? It's that social conversation that comes into the social construct. The social construct, which is what morality is, which is malleable, which is flexible, which can change over time. Cianzetta says, but wouldn't a deontologist happily cause loads of suffering as long as the rules are obeyed? If they do, it's because they believe that that adhering to the rules is better than alleviating the suffering of loads, because they believe that the adherence to these rules in the long term is more beneficial to society. It's better to obey these rules than add flexibility according to suffering. But I think that's like a utilitarian way of seeing it as well, of calculating which one is better than the other. But to a deontologist, better doesn't necessarily mean happier. I think in the long run it is. When you say better, that's what I'm trying to communicate. It's when I think that when people say something is better, I think people inherently mean it's the best outcome for society. It says, I feel like utilitarianism is much more about consequentialism, while deontology is about intent of an action, like intent. I feel like the idea of maximizing happiness and reducing harm is better ascribed to hedonism. But see my argument here. Let's say deontology is about the intent of an action. Again, if you believe that intent of an action is more important than the consequences of an action, the reason why you believe that this is more important to look at the intent than about the consequences, it's because you believe that looking at the intent is more important than the consequences. You believe that it's better to look at the intent than the consequences. And why do you believe so? It's because you believe it's better for humanity. It depends on how you define better, right? It could mean it will make society happier, more prosperous. It could mean it makes society safer. It makes society whatever. But to me, it's all the same. It makes, it betters society. And that to me is a utilitarian perspective. Doing things to better society. I don't know if it makes sense. Chad Floor says, we had philosophy class, the topic utilitarianism, and I think our main issue was that one cannot know how far impact a decision has because we aren't all knowing. But it was a few years ago, so I don't know if I'm remembering right. No, you don't know all the impacts. That's why you need to discuss about it and do the best with which variables you know. Every decision, every moral choice that you make has tons of variables and tons of consequences that you can't possibly know. But you got to make decisions to the best of your knowledge, and that's why, because it's not perfect, because to the best of your knowledge, that we need to do it socially. So it's the best to everybody's knowledge, and we can debate about it. We can have conversations about and it makes society freer. I agree, somebody. It makes society freer. It makes society freer by the fact that instead of it being logically attained, instead of it being ordained by a higher being, whether it be a philosopher king or God, it's one that we have to discuss together and decide as a community together. To the best of my knowledge, choice A is better than choice B. Someone is going to say, well, to the best of my knowledge, choice B is better than choice A. All right, how do we sort this out? Let's try to understand each other and try to see where the differences are and where the priorities are different and blah, blah, blah. That process of, sorting that discussion out is, at least to me, utilitarianism. It's about maximizing the best outcome. And choosing like saying I'm a deontologist. I think that when you say you're a deontologist and you're opposing it to like utilitarianism, you're like, I'm a deontologist. Why are you not a utilitarian? I think deontology is just more consistent and better. That means that you believe that consistency is more important than or consistency will yield better results in the long term. Because I think as species, we want to yield the best results for our social group. Of course, why wouldn't we? Like obviously there are hedonistic values in both utilitarianism and deontology, but I think the difference is very importantly about consequences, something that deontology just doesn't engage in. I don't think it is a utilitarian calculation to say that one rule is better than the other because it gives more happiness. As I said, that maximizing happiness is more a hedonistic value, and that utilitarianism and deontology gives us a way to reach that. But it's interesting because, like, to me, utilitarianism is about maximizing happiness, right? It's how to maximize happiness. It's by looking at the consequences. I guess deontology is also about maximizing happiness, right? By looking at the intents. So maybe maybe maximizing happiness is hedonistic. But to me, utilitarianism is about calculating what is better, right? What maximizes happiness, what makes happiness, or what reduces happiness. Because that's the thing, I think everyone wants to maximize happiness, right? Or you can say security, but to me, maximizing security is about securing happiness. You can say it's about consistency, but if you're about consistency, it's because, it all boils down to because you believe that it assures happiness or reduces suffering. Yeah, reduces unnecessary suffering. Maybe I'm just confused. Because here, let's say we just use this really short definition. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory that determines right from wrong by focusing on outcomes. It is a form of consequentialism. Utilitarianism holds that the most ethical choice is the one that will produce the greatest good for the greatest number. If you say, hey, I am a deontologist, you're saying that this moral system produces the greatest good for the greatest number. It's all about maximizing well-being, as somebody says. And I think that when you say you're a deontologist, you're adopting that position because you believe that it's the best way to maximize the well-being of all. I don't think hedonism is necessarily about self as the pursuit of pleasure. It's not necessarily like short term. It's just the pursuit of pleasure in general, which I believe we all do. It's like we're all hedonistic. In that sense, at least. Psychological or motivational hedonism claims that human behavior is determined by desires to increase pleasure and to decrease pain. And I guess that's what I'm trying to advocate for, hedonism. I believe that human behavior and even our choices in which philosophical or moral framework that we adhere to or that we advocate for is in themselves determined by how to increase pleasure or decrease pain, right? And determining how to increase pleasure and decrease pain, I believe it has to be a utilitarian calculation. Everybody avoids suffering and seeks pleasure, and if you like pain, it's because it gives you pleasure. But what I'm trying to show is that difference between utilitarianism and deontology is more about the difference between consequentialism and non-consequentialism. I don't think the idea that we search for better well-being for all is inherently an utilitarianist calculation. I do think the idea that we search for better well-being for all is a utilitarian calculation. In terms of, at least to me, utilitarianism is about seeking the best outcome and calculating what the best outcome is. If we agree with like utilitarianism being an ethical theory that determines right from wrong by focusing on outcomes, which I believe we all do. I think that's my point. Everything that we do is in terms of outcome and what's the best outcome. It's hard to think of something that I'm going to do without thinking of it as the best or not outcome, if that makes sense. That Destiny and Alex O'Connor spoke about, moral frameworks and all that. And one of them is, why don't you include non-human animals in your moral framework? And Destiny didn't really have a good answer for that, which was, which kind of sucked. But at the same time, if you don't consider that, why would you? But I feel like, for example, I don't consider non-human animals as part of my moral framework for what I explained, for how, for the utility of a moral framework. I've talked about it, right? The reason why we have morality is for our own self-interest, and our self-interest, because it's tied with the social self-interest, we care for others. We have this moral sense. And in that conception of morality, I don't think there's a justification for animals, right? Or for the ethics of, the morality for animals. However, I still advocate for animal liberation or whatever. I'm a speciesist. Yeah, I'm a speciesist for that, but I do advocate for animal liberation for the ecological reason, not necessarily for the moral reason. But I guess I think vegans have really good moral arguments. But the thing is, at least my understanding, and perhaps I should read some Peter Singer, but talking about pain, explaining that pain in itself is inherently a bad thing, to me it's not a good argument. And I feel like that's what the moral argument for the vegans' moral argument relies on, the idea that pain in itself is bad. I don't think it is. Oh, you don't like Peter Singer that much. But the idea that pain in itself is bad, I don't think is a good argument. Isn't pain bad though when it's against the animal's will? But that's what I'm asking. It's, what's a justification for it to be bad morally? Because my justification for pain being bad for humans is that, as I've explained in my moral framework about human pain, about morality is human centric. I believe we have morality. We've developed morality as self-interest beings, right? That in order to survive, need to cooperate with others, and that cooperation, because it couldn't be regulated necessarily socially when we were baby humans, when we were very early humans, it needed to come from like this instinct, which is morality. So I don't know if I need to go back on that argument, but the reason why it's bad to kill, it's because it assures social cohesion. Social cohesion is better for the group, it's better for the species, and therefore anything that's asocial, anything that puts in danger the cohesion of the group is kind of flushed out by evolutionary biology. Not perfectly, obviously not, but it's for the same reason that, for example, dogs, big dogs are good dogs, small dogs are aggressive dogs. See, Connor Core just says, I wonder if my Shih Tzu had a form of morality. Interestingly enough, big dogs don't bite. Small dogs do. Small dogs are more aggressive. And you would think small dogs are more aggressive, like Chihuahuas and things like that. You would think that small dogs are more aggressive. The reason why is because these dogs were artificially selected. So there's natural selection, there's artificial selection. They were artificially selected for their looks, not for their behavior, right? So what happened is their behavior was kind of not even taken consideration of, because only their looks were taken consideration of. So they might look really a specific way, like Chihuahuas do, but because their behavior was not taken into consideration, they can have like characteristics that are not desirable. And because they're so small, we don't necessarily artificially select out the bad elements of these dogs. Big dogs tend to be more docile and like more chill. The reason why, it's not because they're so confident and small dogs are not confident, is because big dogs, if they're dangerous, they're shot, they're killed. Because big dogs, if they're dangerous or if they bite, they don't survive. Not in a human context, at least. So big dogs, evolutionarily, at least in terms of artificial selection, big dogs become more chill. Humans, as a species, have become more chill through natural selection. As soon as you need to be in groups, you become more chill. Because you need to cooperate to survive. So as soon as you don't cooperate, if you're asocial, your little group might disappear or tends to disappear, has a better chance to disappear. Now, all that being said, for animals, at least in terms of animals, not moral worth, but like their, I guess, moral worth, they don't really fit in this framework, in how I see morality and how I perceive it. Another human's liberty, another human's well-being, another human's avoidance of pain is valuable because if socially we're more free, more secure, if there's more well-being socially, that affects me personally in a really good way. Whether a cow is being hurt or not doesn't affect me, not in the slightest. I think there might be moral worth for animals in the sense that they might, for two reasons. One, the absence of well-being for these animals might negatively impact a human. And in the abstract, it impacts me when a human is negatively impacted by the death of an animal. That's one. Two, there's also the argument that if someone, like, for example, kills an animal for fun, right? Chokes a cat out, it might be important to check that person out. Even if the cat has it's not about morality. I don't believe it's more about. I remember your explanation on why you don't apply morality to non-human animals. I disagree because the well-being of the entire ecosystem matters to humans too. Yeah, I agree with the well-being of the entire ecosystem. That I agree with 100%. It's why, like, I'm not going to say, oh, there's no moral objection to exterminating a whole species of animals. I think there is. Like, the ecosystem is important and matters to humans too. I agree. Individual animals, in terms of ecosystems, I don't believe matter that much. Human individuals in human systems, I guess, do matter. If a human is mistreated, if a human is in bonds, that human is taking away the potential to make my life better. That's the utilitarian calculation of why other people's well-being benefits your own well-being. It's an anarchist thing. Bakunin said, I can't be free if nobody else around me is free. You other people need to be free because their freedom affects me. If everybody's in bonds except for me, I'm not my potential as a human being, because other people's potentials are locked down, is not unlocked fully. But if a dog or a cow is in cage, it doesn't have the potential to making me happier in any theoretical way possible. Unless it starts finding a cure for something or composing music. Even if someone doesn't compose music or doesn't find a cure for an illness or anything, there's still a potential for them to do it. And therefore we need to liberate them and let them explore these potentials, because we don't know. But a cow, we know that there is no potential in maximizing human well-being. Somebody says, what about poor disabled babies across the world from you that will never meet you? I think they can still, they have more chances of affecting my well-being than any animal can. And I think understanding, especially now that all of our countries and everybody's situation is interlinked with one another, I'm going to use Malatesta to justify. It's not about affecting me personally in a very direct manner. I think every human affects everybody else, and the conditions that they live in maybe a slight way, but one that is important enough to justify their moral worth. It's not an argument that you can transpose to animals. The inhabitant of Naples is as concerned in the improvement of to the living conditions of the people inhabiting the banks of the Gange, from whence cholera comes to him, as he is in the drainage of the fondaci of his own city. The well-being, the freedom, and the future of a Highlander lost among the gorges of the Apennines are dependent not only on the conditions of prosperity or of poverty of the inhabitants of his village and on the general condition of the Italian people, but also on the workers' conditions in America or Australia, on the discovery made by a Swedish scientist, on the state of mind and material conditions of the Chinese, on there being war or peace in Africa. In other words, on all the circumstances, large and small, which anywhere in the world are acting on a human being. That's how I see it. Yeah, yes, animals do, even spiders. For example, Barbara, I call all my spiders that, eats other bugs that might harm me. See, that could be a moral argument to keep to give moral worth to the spider. In that case, it's fine. I accept that, especially since it benefits you as a person. Like I said, if for example a dog benefits you emotionally or whatever, I would give it moral worth. If a rock benefits you emotionally because it's your pet rock, I will give it moral value. For example, if I maybe not hurt that rock, but if I break it in two, if I throw it in the river, I would think that it's bad. Not because it's a violation of that rock, but because it's a violation of your interest. So I guess it's not the rock that has moral worth. In that case, it's not the dog that has moral worth. But if I give pain to that dog, I'll give pain to you. So it's more of a violation of your interest than the dog's interest. Anarchist with the right concern, saying, I feel like the specious line of thinking can be very problematic. On what basis do we determine who is and who is and is not a human? Black people weren't considered human and thus weren't given any rights. So what justification do we give to call something a human and not? And I don't see how we would exclude something that from moral condemnation just because we don't consider them human. The reason why I exclude people from moral consideration because we don't consider them human is because it's not necessarily because I don't consider them human. It's because it doesn't fulfill my self-interest as a human. The reason why I care about other humans is because they are intimately linked to my self-interest. We've talked about that. Every decision you do is for your own interest. Even when you're altruistic, you're doing it for your own interest. That's something I believe in as well. When I advocate for the freedom of others, it's because when people are free, it benefits me. The reason why I want people to get, as much education as possible, it's also because it benefits me. The reason why I want people to be happy is because it benefits me. The reason why I want people to develop their potential as possible, even though it might not amount to anything, is because by allowing potential to be granted or to be developed as much as possible to everyone, then you enable so many people with so much potential that can become, scientists, that can become artists, that can become anything that will benefit me. The more potential we enable, the better off the conditions of society are. And to the first part of the question, on what basis do we determine who is and who is not human? We already do. I don't think it's that much of a problem anymore. If someone wants to say black people aren't considered human, so we don't have to give them any rights, you can say, well, first, you're racist, but second, unlocking the potential of black people is important because it affects you personally. The contributions of black people to humanity are quantifiable. They're objective. They're not just theoretical. Black people's contributions to humanity are essential to how we live today. Haltosa says, because abuse always comes home, I prefer to avoid abusing animals, even if they only represent a proto-moral entity. I agree with that. Like, I'm not advocating for animal abuse here. Like, if you abuse animals for fun, if inflicting pain on another being, you do it for fun, then I might find that a bit weird. Again, not because you're doing something bad to the animal, but because you take pleasure in inflicting pain, and I might be afraid or concerned that you might do that, or may be more comfortable with doing that to another human. I think that's one of the reasons why we don't like when people torture animals, It's because we see that violence and we're like, okay, that person's violent. That person might do it to someone else. That's why we fear people who torture animals, because we see them as a danger, right? Someone who tortures animals for fun is scary. Somebody says animals have more of an impact on your well-being than you think, Mr. Terminal. I don't think on an individual level, I don't think they do. On a like ecosystemic point of view, yeah, they do. They do have an impact on my well-being, of course. But the individual squirrel, let's say, dogs are part of my social group, and again, I would advocate that doing harm to your dog, or hurting your dog, hiding your dog, killing your dog would be immoral. But not because of the dog in itself, but because of you, because of the impact it would have on you. Tamara says, humans are much worse for the environment with our consumption in airplanes. Yeah. But I'd argue that our breeding of cows and cattle is part of the problem, is extremely problematic as well. I think airplanes is problematic too. That's another take, but I'm okay with making airplanes less accessible, decommercializing airplanes. Another conversation for another day. Lenore says, if an alien species came to Earth of the same intelligence as us and same capabilities and potential as us, but they don't engage with us, would you then treat them the same as animals in your moral consideration? If we treat them in any way, then we are engaging with them, right? And it's an interesting question. I've heard Alex O'Connor use a similar argument in terms of what would you consider a human? At what place, what time and place would you consider someone a human? And I think it's a good question to ask, but I don't know how practical it is. Because when I'm talking about morality, I'm talking about like our biology within it. It's like, what if something happened that our biology is not like, I think morality is a biological fact, right, of how we behave within our own communities. If aliens were to join our communities, I would say, well, yeah, we would treat them as, as part of our communities. So we would have to treat them morally. We'd have to see, is treating these aliens immorally, I guess, or not giving aliens moral consideration, does that benefit us, or does that not benefit us? I think that's the question we have to ask. I mean not engaging with us in a physical sense, like how you don't engage with elephants. Oh, like communicating, or you mean in terms of like communication? So if that's the case, let's say same intelligence, same capabilities and potential, we'd have to see how much does that potential, how does it benefit us as a society? Can it benefit the individual, right? Because that's how, I don't know if that's how you see morality, but that's how I see morality. What is morally good is what benefits myself, and by proxy, the community. Am I missing out on something if I don't attribute them moral worth? Is it possible that they can come up with, a valuable, to build a similar civilization as us? In that case, yeah, we can definitely benefit from that. If they can build a similar civilization as us, and I don't know, come up with cures for diseases, can come up with technology to increase efficiency in terms of food production to make it available to all. If there's the potential for that, in that case, I believe we can grant them like a morality or moral consideration in that sense. I hope that makes my position a bit more clear. Well, they might come up with those, but they don't give us any of those, as we don't engage with each other. If you're in your hypothetical, it's impossible that we engage with each other. Like impossible. Like it's a fact of nature that we cannot engage with each other, even if they find technology that can feed the whole population for nothing. in that case, like, no, they can't be part of our community or they can't benefit us. But I would have a hard time believing that. The potential to engage with them would be maybe just a species on another planet. I would advocate in that sense, like they're on another planet, they're doing their thing. I would advocate that, we have a moral imperative to not act, to treat them as other humans for the potential that they might give us, because we don't know. They might benefit us. Yeah, unless they become a threat, as Connor Core says. Yeah, no, there is a gray zone, pyroanarchist. There's a gray zone when it comes to like species that are, that we don't know of yet. If we don't know if they can benefit or not, if we can benefit or not from them, then we have to be cautious about maybe missing out on an opportunity to make everybody else happy, right? I think that's the interesting thing is, do we consider, for example, life in itself as morally valuable? And I believe the justification for valuable life is through our own self-interest. That's why we give value to life, is because we are self-interested in the conservation and the protection of others' life because it protects us. I think that's why we give value to life. I think a lot of people are going to give value to life as an intrinsic thing. And Lenore says, I don't know. I feel that if we have the ability to consider other species as moral agents, we should do so. Why other species? Like to me, I have a consistent way of giving morality to things or not, right? And that is in line, I believe, with our biological nature, which even granted us morality. Morality has a specific purpose, and I adhere to it. But like giving like moral agency to other species, if plants could feel pain, would you consider plants as moral agents as well? Because the problem here is, if you consider them as moral agents, but lesser moral agents than humans, right? Because we do consider them, like, I imagine pyroanarchist said, and Prim take. Pyroanarchist says, we should consider, for example, cockroaches as moral agents, right? But earlier you said there's a danger by saying that some species are moral agents and some aren't. Don't you believe that there lies the same danger of giving a gradient of moral agency to different species? Because then we could just give a gradient of moral agency to different races, ethnicities, peoples, right? The danger remains the same. And why pain? If an animal could not feel pain, could you be justified in kicking it? Right? If something happened in their brain where they just can't feel pain at all, would you be justified in, I don't know, bruising their arm or whatever, or kicking them, or depends, does it help the animal? I don't know. Yeah, sort of, Temur, that's a good argument that might, sort of like Pascal's wager, but for assigning moral agency. Will we lose something by falsely assigning moral agency? Not really. What about falsely denying it? But that's the thing. What gives moral agency? Like James TV called consciousness, but it's not consciousness, it's pain. But why pain? I'm talking about benefit the human being, and I ground that in my belief that like morality is biologically, it's a biological feature, right? Because it's a biological feature, we can kind of understand it and say, all right, the reason why we have morality is for our own self-interest and the interest of the group. And so my basis in moral agency is there. But if the basis for moral agency is pain, why is it pain? To me, it feels a bit arbitrary, right? There's a utility in assigning moral agency to your self-interest and to the interest of the group. There's a utility. There's a reason for doing that. But if it's just pain, why is it pain? I want the logic. It's specifically about pain rather about sentience. Okay, but then why sentience or sentience? Sentience. Yeah, James TVJ says, to me, even sentience is a line too high. And I know, like, I'm trying to see, like, where is the line, right? And I feel like everything is arbitrary except for my own. Maybe there doesn't need to be a line. I don't know. Our anarchist says, but also we might have a biological moral system to prevent hurting each other, but doesn't any other social species have the same? Yeah. What makes us special? Nothing makes us special. We're not special. I mean, we are kind of special. We can... I'm talking to you from across the world on a camera, but the other species have the same, let's say, moral system. To them, it may not manifest itself as morality. It might just manifest itself as behavior, right? Because they're not as big brain and complex as us. But the way to act among each other, the behavior, the social behavior, is not dictated by a moral system, but by behavior, by instinct, right? I don't think that's consequential. I don't, like, of course, they're going to behave to strive for their own species, and we will do the same for ourselves. I don't see why we have to respect theirs. Again, like, there's no, like, what makes us special doesn't give a justification for respecting them. I guess that's what I want, you know? It's like a moral justification or a moral defense, aside from pain is bad or sentience is good. Why should we? Reasoning, you know, logical reasoning. That's not either like a instinct or the appeal to like, you know, the respect of a I don't know, a nebulous concept, such as like pain. Not that it's nebulous, but like arbitrary concept as pain. Power Anarchist says, why is our moral system both superior to others and justified be imposed on those others? I don't think it's superior. I think our moral system is just has a utility, and the utility is to benefit our own self-interest. And we do that mostly, the moral system mostly assures that our individual interest aligns with the interest of everyone, and that the interest of everyone aligns with our own. It's a deep, I think the moral system that we've inherited from biology is one of social cohesion. I don't think it's superior. It just has a function. It's not a superior function. It's just a function that's tailored to our needs. And our needs as a human species is to not kill each other. And it's not to hurt each other. Our needs is to be cooperative. Our needs is to, you know, ensure mutual aid. I don't think it's a superior system. I just think it's a system tailored to what we need. It's not a nebulous one. It's not like the reason why our system is tailored to that is not for some metaphysical reasons. It's there for a reason, and the reason is social cohesion. Pyroanarchist, he said, because we have the capability to, and why should we abstain from engaging in our potential? But like you're saying, we should be moral with animals because we can. But to me, it's not compelling enough, you know? Doing something just because we can, to me, it's not. I'm not saying that I would just kick a dog for the fun of it, or, you know, kill a cow just because they don't have moral agency. But if we are going to say, right, we need to give moral agency to a cow, it needs to be a stronger argument than because we can. I think, you know. But again, it's because I see morality as something that you know, as something that's that has utility. And I think it's hard to argue that morality isn't born out of utility. So if we're gonna do morality, we're gonna have to keep in mind the utility of it, right? Because this whole purpose is is utility. So doing something just because we can doesn't really address the utility of it, or its utility factor in a way. Pyroanarchist says, biology is arbitrary at this point, though. If we have already gone beyond the idea of biology, I think Like, why should I follow biology? I mean, do trans people not go against their biology when they change sex? I mean, they do. Yeah. But again, it's fine to it's fine to do that because it maximizes the pleasure not only of that person but of society by allowing that person to be who they want to be. There's a justification, you know, to go beyond biology. I think if we go beyond biology, it's always with justification. And I'm not against going beyond biology. Obviously not. What I'm saying is, if we do, we probably should have a good justification for it, right? I guess it's like, it goes against my biology to shave myself, I guess, right? Or to cut my hair. Yet I still do it because long hair can get annoying. Like a long beard, I just don't like that. So I do go against my own biology as well. In that sense, in a very minor sense. We all do in different ways. We're good with these things. We're good with either not adhering to our biology or like just not even considering it. But there's always a utility to not doing it, right? There's always a reason for it. That's what I'm asking for, a reason to consider animals as moral beings. Halito says, sorry for the emotional argument, but when I look into the eyes of a cow or cat or spider, I see dim reflections of myself. I ascribe moral value to myself, so I'm forced to recognize the refinements between myself and other beings, even if there are lesser beings. Yeah, you shouldn't call them lesser beings. Humans are not that special. I understand that as well. I think the emotional argument is not necessarily a bad one in terms of like, everybody has, you know, can feel sympathy for an animal. And I don't think that's bad, right? It's not a bad thing. Same thing, I feel sympathy for animals. I'll feel bad if I see a video of a baby, a baby lion being abandoned, or I don't know if you've seen these videos of ducklings following their moms in the street and then all falling in a gutter, and then because they're all so small. That is so fucking terrible. It's so sad. And I understand that. I agree with that. I guess my what I'm asking more is like more on a, I'm not asking about like the experience of it, because I share the experience. What I'm asking for is more like the logical explanation for it. Because I have a logical explanation for considering other humans as moral beings or moral agents, I guess. I have that explanation. I have it, and I feel like it's solid, it's bulletproof, and it you know, it bulletproofs humans from at least in my case, in my vision of it, from human rights abuses. Now what I want is the same for animals. Because I understand you said like biology seems like an arbitrary end. To me, it's more like the utility of attributing morality to humans. And I think utility is the end, and I guess it's arbitrary. But I feel like everything we do, everything we advocate for, boils down to utility. You know, there's a justification behind doing it. Everything we do needs to have a justification behind it, right? And I think when it comes to attributing morality to other humans, the reason why we do it is, I believe, through biology and because it's for like social cohesion. But even in utility, I don't think leaving out animals and morality seems arbitrary. I'm not saying we should leave animals out of morality. What I'm saying is, I don't have the reason to include them in morality. And if there is a reason, it would be different from humans, because for humans, it's about protection, it's about maximizing potential, blah, 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 blah. You know, anyone with the maximized potential can maybe become an artist, a scientist, a thinker, whatever, philosopher. I'm not saying because of that, we can't give animals morality. I'm saying we need a justification for animals, because that one, which I give for humans, cannot be applied to animals. So I'm looking for one for animals. And if I can't find one for animals, I have a hard time giving it to animals if I don't see it. Again, I'm still advocating for, like, I still think there's an experiential element to it. And fundamentally, I believe we all agree on the same thing. What I'm asking is just, what's the difference, right? What's the difference? What's the justification? Logical justification. And if you want to say there's none, and we should just do it because, out of pure instinct, or because it makes us feel better to give them morality, then in that case, I can take that. I can accept that, right? But to me, it's not super bulletproof to say that it makes us feel better. But, I guess it's a justification. That's what I'm asking for. It makes the animals feel better. This to me just seems like an arbitrary line you place between animals and humans. Like, sure, we want to protect each other, but why would I care? Why should I care? As an anarchist, shouldn't you, as a pyro-anarchist, shouldn't you believe in mutual aid, cooperation? Like, the idea that humans are a social species and it's ingrained in us. I don't know. Anyway, to me, utility just doesn't matter all that much. Yeah, maybe that's where I can move beyond biology or utility. So why should I stop? So it's like, but see the justification. It's like, oh, we should care for animals, and it's like, why? And the answer is, why not? And perhaps that's good enough. I'm not saying that we shouldn't care for animals, or if we should. Usually people say, like, the burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim. Every time you say, all right, we should care for this, for that, there's always a reason, right? Like, why should we care for homeless people? Because by maximizing their potential and their happiness, it will be beneficial to me in the end run, right? Morally, that's what it boils down to. Again, I'll go back to the Bakunin, the liberty of all. I can only be free once everyone is free. I appeal to the well-being of others for my best well-being for myself. I believe it's a core anarchist idea. Maximizing the pleasure of animal can benefit me, but I would like to know how. That's the thing. How is maximizing the benefit of I don't know, of a squirrel in the forests of Canada benefit me? But see, the individual squirrel doesn't really. You can advocate for all of squirrels, but the individual squirrel, in that case, like where you're doing the healthier forest, I think you're advocating for a population of squirrels, but not an individual squirrel. When I say, for example, I'd advocate for human beings to be free and to maximize their potential, I'm saying that one person needs to be free, because that one person, by developing their potential, has the chance to greatly affect my life. Again, artistically, scientifically, philosophically. In terms of developing a cure, making art, or creating a new system of moral thought or whatever. Right? That's my justification for that one human being. An individual squirrel can spread a lot of trees, I guess, but it's not that individual squirrel that's going to change if a lot of trees are spread or not. It's the population of squirrels, right? Because I agree, healthy ecosystems are good. Healthy ecosystems are not created by healthy individual species, but the population of the species itself. So I will say, advocating for squirrels in general to exist and to thrive is a good thing. I think it's moral for squirrels to exist. But that one individual squirrel, I don't know. Why apply that standards to the squirrel but not to the homeless man? Because a homeless man who, by not allowing the homeless man to maximize the potential, we might miss out on a lot. By not allowing the squirrel to spread the trees or whatever, other squirrels are going to do it. It's just one squirrel. The impact that one squirrel can have on my life is nothing. The impact that one person can have in my life, whose potential is maximized, it can be life-changing. We don't, yeah, there you go. How do we know that the one individual human will help us? We don't know. It's very possible that, you maximize the potential of someone and that one person does nothing with their life and it doesn't help you at all. But not allowing the potential, not allowing the chance for that person to, because you don't know. So because humans have such potential to help us with, as I said, art, science, or philosophy, and other fields as well, we have to give them the shot. Because, that person could cure cancer or whatever. Because we live in human societies, and humans are interlinked much more than a squirrel and a human. I feel like this is, I don't know, I feel like that's common sense, no? Happier humans makes for happier individuals. Because do I have to whip out the Malatesta quote again? Yeah, no, I understand, Lenore. I think the difference here is that humans have the potential to be unique in the task that they bring, right? So the scientist can bring something new and unique. The artist can bring something new and unique. That's why personally I give so much importance to the individual, and that's why I give so much importance to maximizing the potential for every individual. So because someone can through their individuality create something completely new in terms of art, it's important to help them maximize their potential, because what they can bring to the table might be something that we've never seen before. A squirrel does not have that potential, because that squirrel only answers to instincts. That individual squirrel is not going to plant trees in a very, very different way that will be different enough to have an impact on me. Squirrels are interchangeable. I guess that's what I'm going to say. Squirrels are interchangeable. Humans are not. Individual squirrels can be interchangeable in their task. Individual humans are not. Is it not up to the squirrels to create a forest or a painter to paint? That's the thing, though. The painter will paint something very individual and unique that will give it value through that individual painter. The squirrel will create a forest, which is good, but not the individual squirrel. So for the squirrel, we can argue that the broader group of squirrels is important to create forests, but not individual squirrels, because they bring no individuality to the craft that they do, which is create forests. For a painter, the painter does. That's why we should advocate for the individuality and the maximization of the potential of individual painters and individual scientists, philosophers, and all. But I really love this conversation, and I hope Lenore, you don't hate me for it. I hope you've been enjoying this and not tearing your hair out.